Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, breaking news overnight. A first look at the documents seized at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. The Justice Department releasing this picture they say shows some of the documents FBI agents found. The DOJ included that image in a new filing overnight, claiming that appointing a special master in the case would harm national security interests. This morning, the new information about the search this filing reveals. Running out, the water crisis in Mississippi reaching a new level, with the city of Jackson not having enough water to distribute following a failure at the city's water treatment plant. Cars lined up for miles to get clean water, but the supply ran out quickly.
Water that they are given, well, you can't get to it because the line be so damn long.
We've had to boil water to cook, to wash dishes, pretty much to brush our teeth.
The push to provide the most basic of needs to thousands of people. Tributes pouring in this morning for Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union who paved the way for the end of the Cold War. We're taking a look back at Gorbachev's years of leadership and his global legacy. Plus, changing the game. An NHL executive is making her mark in a male-dominated field. How she channeled her love of sports into a successful career, and her advice for women hoping to be trailblazers in their field. Our next installment of Women Mean Business. It's so fun to be having these cool series on the show.
Absolutely, and always getting good advice every single week.
I know. Get your notebooks out, take some notes. We begin, though, this morning with those new developments overnight in the legal battle between former President Trump and the Justice Department over classified documents.
In a late-night court filing, the DOJ argued against Trump's request for a third party to review the materials taken from the former president's home. The department says that a so-called special master would impede an ongoing criminal investigation and endanger national security. The DOJ also provided its clearest indication yet that it believes there was an effort to obstruct the investigation, including concealing or removing highly sensitive government records. We're going to dig into that explosive court filing with NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Good morning to both of you. Julia, let's start with you. The court filing says the FBI found 100 classified documents at Mar-a-Lago in a matter of hours, more than twice as many as Trump's team had voluntarily turned over earlier this year. What else did we learn?
Well, we learned that they had an awful lot of cooperation about where those documents might be before they even went in. This is really the most definitive rebuttal from the Justice Department to Trump's legal team to date. We're learning way more from this than we ever did from the redacted affidavit that we got last week or from the search warrant that was released shortly after the search. We're learning now about the volume of documents there, the highly classified markings they had, and a possible obstruction case. We got a hint of that obstruction case last week. Now we're told that they think that some of these materials, there were not only so many materials left behind after the lawyers for Trump swore in written statements that they'd handed everything over, but they also believe that some of these materials have been taken from a storage room at Mar-a-Lago and placed elsewhere in order to obstruct the investigation. They also say this is not just a matter of the former president not complying with the Presidential Records Act and not handing everything over to the National Archives. This is really a matter of national security because of the highly sensitive nature of these documents. In fact, it seems that some of these documents could even out sources of human intelligence, people who put themselves in danger around the world to be able to better inform the United States. They believe that's what's at stake here, and they think that if the court appointed a special master, that can not only delay and impede the investigation, but it could be that that person does not have the high level of security clearance that they would need in order to review these documents. They said even FBI agents had to get upgraded in their security clearances to be able to review these highly sensitive documents. So we're learning quite a bit here.
Danny, let's bring you into this conversation, and I want to pick up on what Julia was just saying about this potential obstruction. So that sort of changes things, right? I mean, at first, what she just mentioned about moving those documents, maybe even somewhere else. Also, a Trump representative potentially falsely claimed that all sensitive materials had already been returned. I mean, those seem like some serious allegations. How does that change things?
It is the government's definitive piece on the bad behavior of the Trump team in being asked to return these documents. And then here's a subpoena and they didn't get the documents. And then finally, they had to get a search warrant to get these documents. It is the old adage of you get what you asked for. It couldn't be more true here because the Trump team made this motion for a special master, which gives them questionable benefit, even if it's granted. I don't know how that even really helps the Trump team at this point. But DOJ took the opportunity to not only use the 20 pages they're allowed, but ask for additional pages from the court to essentially hit the Trump team over the head with a figurative folding chair of facts describing all the bad behavior that the Trump team engaged in not giving these documents back. I wondered why they needed those extra pages. They explained why this morning or last night when they explained all the delay tactics used by the Trump team.
I have to keep in mind this is all coming from the DOJ. This is their argument. Julia, are we hearing it all from Trump and his team, even though this filing came late last night?
Well, we will hear from them today. They have an 8 p.m. deadline to file in this court their rebuttal to what we saw last night. But then we'll see a hearing also tomorrow that's scheduled to go before this judge, who's already hinted. She said she had a preliminary intent to grant the request for a special master in this case. But after seeing this very definitive, I love the figurative folding chair that Danny referred to, after seeing that, will they now be in a tougher position going in? Might the Justice Department have swayed this Trump-appointed judge to maybe rethink not only whether a special master is necessary, but why that maybe a special master could be damaging to this case? She's a fairly new judge. Could this be, her big moment, not only to maybe shine, but to actually get something wrong? Would she want to avoid making a misstep here and kind of muddling what's a very high-profile federal investigation?
We've got Danny on set nodding here. Jump in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, for a federal judge, keep in mind the government makes a powerful argument for standing. Now, standing is this jurisdictional argument. It asks basically, what business is this of yours? And the point is that Trump is no longer the president. He doesn't have any interest in these documents anymore. They're not his. And it's quietly one of the most powerful reasons for judges to avoid deciding cases. And by the way, that might be a really good reason for this judge. This is a Trump-appointed judge, probably has political or even higher court aspirations. This is a great reason for her to dismiss without ever dealing with the thorny issues. When a court decides, hey, there's no standing to hear this, hey, it's not my fault. I just don't have jurisdiction to hear this case. It's a great political out for this judge. I think the judge initially was thinking, hey, in an abundance of caution, maybe I'll appoint a special master. Now maybe the judge is saying, ooh, standing. I don't have to deal with any of this. I won't be a Republican villain. I don't have jurisdiction to hear the case. It's a great out. DOJ did a great job pointing that out.
All right, Danny, Julia, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Love the folding chair. Awesome. Thanks, Danny. All right, and now to the passing of one of the most influential figures of the 20th century, Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union and a reformer who helped bring an end to the Cold War, has died at the age of 91. The Gorbachev Foundation confirmed his death came, quote, after a serious and long illness. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons takes a look back at his life.
By Soviet standards, Mikhail Gorbachev's rule was short, but the last leader of the Soviet Union said his 6 years in power felt like a lifetime. In 1985, the aging members of the Soviet Politburo turned to the 54-year-old Gorbachev to breathe new life into the system. Little did they know the dark-suited bureaucrat with the distinctive birthmark would not only change the Communist Party, but the world.
Let's end the Cold War. Let's end the nuclear confrontation. Let's abolish nuclear weapons. That was revolutionary.
Gorbachev made friends with the Soviet Union's former enemies, none more so than the US President Ronald Reagan. They negotiated a breakthrough nuclear missile treaty and formed a strong bond. That same year, Gorbachev sat down with NBC's Tom Brokaw, a TV first, and Americans were amazed by this open, reassuring Soviet leader and charmed by Raisa, the first Soviet First Lady they'd ever seen. But it was at home where Gorbachev's two big ideas, glasnost or openness and perestroika, economic restructuring, let a genie out of the bottle even he couldn't put back. We could and should have saved the Soviet Union, but we lost politically, he later said. Soviets got more freedom, but nothing to buy. The economy collapsed. While in Eastern Europe, people didn't embrace his reforms, they fled them. But in perhaps his most iconic act, Gorbachev let the Berlin Wall fall, and a year later was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. But back in Moscow, his own colleagues plotted and failed to overthrow him in a three-day coup. When Gorbachev returned from house arrest in the Crimea, he landed in a different world. Russian President Boris Yeltsin was now firmly in charge. Within months, Gorbachev resigned, and the Soviet Union was no more. Years later, he said his main concern was to avoid bloodshed. There could have been civil war in a country saturated with nuclear weapons, he said. He went on to become an international celebrity, making ads for Pizza Hut and Louis Vuitton to fund his foundation. In Russia, few paid attention to his calls for more democracy.
He's a hero to many. The majority of the world, he's a hero. To a minority, he's a villain.
Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, the man who ended the Cold War, was never forgiven for the demise of his country and died largely reviled by his own people. Keir Simmons, NBC News.
Now let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
Michelle Grossman is with us. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning to you both. And we are looking at a heat wave that is starting in the West Coast, and it's going to last not only today, tomorrow, and through next week. So we're looking at a major weather headline as we go throughout the next week or so. It's going to be historical. It's dangerous, record-breaking. We could break all-time records for the month of September, which starts tomorrow. So taking a look for today, we're looking at 49 million people impacted from the Northwest into the Intermountain West. Also the Southwest, where you see that orange, that is a heat advisory. So that's mainly the Northwest into the Intermountain West. But Southern California under an excessive heat warning. That includes Los Angeles, San Diego, Los Angeles and Sacramento, places like that could see their hottest days yet this year for 2022. So we're going to be watching this very, very closely as we're looking at today's temperatures into the 90s, into the triple digits. Reno today right near 100 degrees. The record is 100. Palmdale 108, 104 today in Boise. 100 degrees the forecasted high in Salt Lake City. The record there is 98. So we're going to break some records today, and we're going to break some records over the next several days. The heat wave will continue into the weekend, the holiday weekend, and then beyond that. Some of these alerts are in place until next Tuesday. Portland, you're hot too. Temperatures in the 90s today, 91 on Friday, 91 on Thursday. Boise into the triple digits Friday and Saturday as well. Look at Sacramento, 105 on Thursday, 104 on Friday, 108 degrees on Saturday. We're typically in the 60s and 70s there, so that is going to be a big story. Now, big contrast in the Northeast. Yes, we're still hot. Yes, we're still looking at temperatures in the 80s, some spots near 90 degrees. But we had that cold front that came through yesterday, brought the showers, brought the storms, but also is wiping out the humidity. So we're going to feel really comfortable by the afternoon. It's still a little sticky this morning, but humidity levels are going down throughout the afternoon hours. This is what's left over from the cold front. You can see parts of New England still seeing some rain this morning, some heavy downpours, especially where you see those brighter colors. Boston, you're clearing out. That's good news, but you did have some rain just a little bit ago. Now, as we go in a little bit closer here, this is going to get hung up here. So it's going to take a little longer to clear northern New England. And then we're looking towards the south because the tail end of this cold front is in the south. And we're looking at more showers and storms. We could see rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches per hour across Texas. We still need rain there in terms of the drought, but we just had so much rain in the past week that they could use a little break there. We could use a little break along the Gulf Coast as well. We could use a little break in the southeast, but we're not going to get that today. We're looking at showers also in the state of Florida, and that's going to continue tomorrow. Spotty showers across the Gulf Coast into the state of Florida, and then more widespread in the state of Texas. We could see 1, 2, even 3 inches of rain in Texas. And we do have a flood watch in portions of southwestern Texas. New Mexico, southeastern New Mexico could see some heavy rain in spots as well. Notice where you see those dark darker colors right near Abilene. That's where we're expecting the heaviest rain. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. We're going to keep talking about the South and that water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi. A state of emergency is in effect this morning after recent flooding crippled the city's already delicate water system. Nearly 200,000 people in the capital city are without water this morning, and officials say it could take weeks to get the system up and running again. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas joins us now from just outside the capital in Ridgeland, Mississippi. Guad, good morning.
Joe, good morning. This is the Obie Curtis water treatment plant that provides most of the water for the city of Jackson. It's the plant that failed, triggering this emergency after the flooding. But the people here say they've been dealing with issues for years now. The current boil water notice has been in place for a month. Now, the city manages this plant, and they say they've been needing extra resources for some time. Under the current emergency, the state has stepped in, bringing in their experts to look into the issues and see what they can do to make the repairs and bring the people of the city running water.
This morning in Jackson, Mississippi, residents are already lining up for limited supplies of water. The governor declaring a new state of emergency, calling in the National Guard to help distribute water to 180,000 people.
This is not a situation that's going to be solved immediately, and it's not going to be solved overnight.
If you're lucky enough to get water from the tap, it has to be boiled. Taprice Young says her kids' schools have no water, forcing the district to implement virtual learning this week. It also means showering at a relative's house and spending $100 a week for bottled water.
We've had to boil water to cook, to wash dishes, pretty much to brush our teeth. So it's been hectic.
Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, now coaching at Jackson State University, says his players and the other students here need to be supported.
As the city of Jackson, we don't have water. So right now, we're operating in crisis mode.
And for many more residents, the wait for water could be long.
What's your message to the people that had to leave empty-handed today?
We do have water in the system. We are putting it in the city's distribution system, and over the next 24 to 36 hours, we will see significant numbers of the truckloads of clean water.
As officials do what they can, friends and family are relying on each other. Stephanie Grievler spent $90 on this one grocery run to make sure her elderly parents had water.
It is a complete shame that this is not a new thing. Water challenges have been there for years.
And that's what most of the people we spoke to kept telling us. Now, they tell us we should see more resources today with better distribution at these centers where people can get the water. Meanwhile, President Biden has accepted the emergency declaration, which means more resources from the federal government. FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security will now be involved, helping the state and the city make the necessary repairs here to get that running water for the city, Joe.
All right, they can't get those resources fast enough. Guad Venegas, thank you so much. Now to our NBC News exclusive. We got rare access inside the Pfizer facility that's producing the next generation of COVID boosters, specifically targeting Omicron. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk reports on the preparations for rolling out the shot once it's authorized by the FDA.
Pfizer's been working on the next generation of COVID vaccine for months. It targets the Omicron variant, but it needs FDA authorization, which could come in the coming days.
A new Pfizer COVID vaccine is rolling off the assembly line in Kalamazoo.
The first thing you notice is that the tops of the vials aren't purple.
You notice the color change.
A new color because there is a new target, the Omicron BA4 and BA5 variants. But it still needs FDA authorization, which could come as early as this week.
We have doses ready virtually immediately. So within 24 hours, trucks will leave the facility.
So that could be people this weekend getting shots, potentially.
We are ready to go whenever the approval comes down.
Pfizer's chief global supply officer gave NBC News an exclusive tour of the company's massive production facility.
First thing we want to do is make sure that every element of that vial is to perfection.
Back in June, the FDA asked both Pfizer and Moderna to develop shots targeting BA5, which makes up most of the cases in the U.S.
Well, it's certainly hoped that these new updated vaccines will provide improved protection against serious disease serious enough to require hospitalization.
But because the process was so fast, human trials have not been completed.
Will you run human trials on this one?
Human trials for sure actually are just begun. So absolutely, they're underway.
Health officials point out the annual flu vaccine is not tested on humans. But COVID mutates faster than the flu.
It feels a little bit like whack-a-mole with this virus. How difficult is it to keep pace with how quickly the virus is changing?
And it's a very special disease. We launched the original product in 9 months, and now we're actually converting from variants in 100 days or less.
Experts say this new shot could prevent a serious COVID surge in the coming months.
We have a vast amount of information about the safety of these vaccines and the fact that these vaccines really do provide protection against serious disease.
Pfizer's original vaccine was initially shown to be 95% effective at preventing infection, but over time the potency wore off. Boosters were necessary. Demand has dropped. Just over 108 million people have the first booster. Only 23 million have gotten the second. Even so, Pfizer says it has 30 million doses of this new booster ready to go out the door.
Also in the news this week, Moderna has sued Pfizer, accusing the company of patent infringement over the COVID vaccine. Pfizer says it was surprised by the lawsuit. It says that its vaccine is based on technology its German partner BioNTech developed. Back to you.
All right, Stephanie Gosk, thank you.
For more, we're joined now by NBC News medical contributor and emergency medicine physician, Dr. Uche Blackstock. She's also the CEO of Advancing Health Equity. Dr. Blackstock, thanks so much for joining us this morning. So, as Stephanie just mentioned there, FDA authorization on these updated boosters could come as early as this week. But walk us through how, with a virus like COVID-19 that's changed and evolved into several variants, and there could be more, how much difference will this make?
So good morning, Savannah. Thank you so much for having me. You know, it will definitely make a difference. The question is how much of a difference. The fact is that we have seen in the data that we have so far that this vaccine does a great job targeting BA4 and BA5. We also know that the original vaccine that also is pretty effective against the worst outcomes of COVID-19. We need to see whether this updated vaccine is going to decrease infection, transmission, and improve that efficacy against severe outcomes of COVID-19 even more. And as you mentioned, as was mentioned in the beginning, you know, we don't have a lot of data yet. The data that we do have is from those original clinical trials and on Pfizer's BA1 trial in humans, and then some animal data. So we're going to have to see, and Pfizer and Moderna have both said that they are going to continue to collect data on people who have been receiving this updated booster over the next few months.
I mean, these are the first COVID shots distributed without those human trials. Does that matter, Dr. Blackstock?
So those first human trials are very important in determining safety and efficacy. And so, you know, those human trials are really not that important at this time, given the urgency. We know that these vaccines work. The question is just sort of how well this updated vaccine is going to work. And it is a good sign that Moderna and Pfizer will be collecting that data. So does the FDA need that data to authorize this shot? No, they do not, because we know that based on the animal data that these vaccines do a great job of targeting BA4 and BA5 subvariants.
So if the FDA does authorize this upgraded booster shot, who should get one?
And so that's the question. And so we're going to see what the recommendations of the CDC advisory group is. Some experts have been saying only people who are high risk should get this new updated booster. But I have a feeling that the CDC is going to recommend anyone over 12 who has not been recently infected or boosted should receive this updated booster. And that's someone who hasn't been infected or boosted in the last 6 months, likely. So it remains to be seen, but we should know by the end of the week.
All right, that's something a lot of people are wondering about. Dr. Uche Blackstock, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Coming
you.
up on Morning News Now, more than 1,000 people have now died from severe flooding in Pakistan. We'll have more this morning on the growing concerns that the situation there is only going to get worse.
Plus, remembering the People's Princess, 25 years since the death of Princess Diana, how Britain and her sons, Princes William and Harry, are honoring her today. After the break.
This morning, officials in Pakistan are sounding the alarm over waterborne diseases as floodwaters in many parts of the country begin to recede.
More than 1,100 people have died since mid-June when severe monsoon rains began, resulting in catastrophic floods that have actually left millions homeless. NBC News correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us now with the latest. Hey, Ali, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Well, the sheer magnitude of the devastation and destruction is hard to fathom. The livelihood of millions of people has been washed away. Before and after satellite images show the extent of the damage caused by these catastrophic floods. The images show swathes of green fields, villages and buildings before the monsoonal rains and flooding, and then satellite images reveal the same areas later covered in brown water. Some parts of the road have disappeared and floodwaters have created their own rivers. Let's take a look at what's been happening on the ground in Pakistan. Floods of epic proportions in Pakistan have claimed the lives of at least 1,100 people, caused unprecedented devastation across the country while displacing millions, according to the Pakistani government. Oceans of water submerge entire districts. Not a single government official has visited this small village that NBC News visited in northern Pakistan. Residents left to fend for themselves, salvaging what they can.
The water is now...
Pakistan's climate minister, Sherry Rehman, appealing for international help to tackle what she calls a monster monsoon that has left a third of the country, an area roughly the size of the United Kingdom, underwater. The flooding catastrophe has been brought on by weeks of extreme monsoonal rainfall and melting glaciers, making it far from a normal monsoon. Pakistani officials are calling it climate dystopia on their doorstep. The deluge destroying bridges, roads, washing away hundreds of thousands of homes, wiping out food and cotton crops, creating food insecurity and damage to textile exports. Officials say early estimates put the damage at more than $10 billion. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif flying over the disaster zone on Sunday, saying it was the worst monsoon Pakistan has seen in 3 decades. Tweeting, "The magnitude of the calamity is bigger than estimated." More than 30 million people have been affected by the disaster. That's roughly 1 in 7 Pakistanis, with over 500,000 forced to seek refuge in temporary camps. NBC News visited a refugee camp in northern Pakistan, where people are getting sick and lacking basic humanitarian assistance. This resident of the camp telling us they've only been fed rice since arriving at the camp. The military has been deploying rescue helicopters, but they're struggling to pluck people to safety in the north, where steep hills and valleys make flying conditions treacherous. The worst affected areas are in the south of the country, with most of the destruction falling along the Indus River.
Pakistan is a war.
UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres has called it a monsoon on steroids, squarely blaming climate change, warning that we are sleepwalking towards disaster. The forecast for Pakistan is not good. With more deluge and destruction expected, the country is bracing itself for worse to come. And guys, Pakistan was already in a financial crisis. The economy is struggling to keep its head above water, facing high inflation, a depreciating currency, and a current account deficit. This latest deluge is only going to exacerbate that predicament. Essential foods and textile crops have been wiped out, creating food insecurity and a deficit in exports. Initial estimates put the extent of the damage at $10 billion, but officials in Pakistan say that figure is likely to rise much further. Guys?
So important to be reporting on this. Ali, thank you so much.
Today marks 25 years since the tragic death of Princess Diana.
She was just 36 years old when she died in a car crash in Paris, along with her boyfriend, Dodi Fayed, and her driver, Henry Paul. Diana was known as the People's Princess, and her death shocked the world. People magazine is remembering her legacy in its latest issue, 25 years without Diana.
And Simon Perry, chief foreign correspondent for People magazine, joins us now. Simon, we just said it there. She was known as the People's Princess. Talk to us about how she managed to make her mark, not just on the royal family, but really beyond the royal family, on the entire world.
Yes, good morning. Well, yeah, she had an incredible impact, didn't she? 25 years ago, the scenes around here in central London were astonishing when she passed away. But before then, yes, she just managed to breathe new life into what was obviously an ancient institution, and did so by having a touch with ordinary people that arguably hadn't been seen before. So I think obviously those who met her or came across her or watched pictures of her were drawn to her, but at the same time then bought into and followed the sort of issues and causes and things that she was therefore interested in. And yeah, that's where her legacy comes in, I think.
Of course, part of her legacy are her two sons, Prince Harry and Prince William. Now, they publicly mourned their mother in 2017 on the 20th anniversary of her death. But this time, they're said to be spending the day privately and apart, as we've seen quite a bit in recent years. We've talked a lot about the changes and the strain on their relationship. But on a day like today, for them to be apart, as somebody who covers this, how much does that tell you about their relationship right now?
Well, sadly, as you say, they are estranged and they're living thousands of miles apart, so they won't be together on this very poignant day. But in both cases, they'll be remembering her, as Harry said last week, going over, sharing her spirit, I think he put it, with his children over in California. And I'm sure Prince William is doing very similar here in near here in Windsor, where they're living. Yeah, I think to anyone who knows of them or has covered the brothers, it's a shame that they're not together on a day like today, but they'll be remembering her in their own special way.
Diana, we know, lived her life in the public spotlight even when she didn't want to live it in the public spotlight. Was there any part of her life that she did manage to keep mostly private and out of public scrutiny?
I think she did manage to do so. I mean, there are lots of things like a private life that she had with arguably her last great love, Hasnat Khan, didn't really become known until the last months of that relationship. She'd been seeing him for quite some time, for example. So, she did her best to do things with her sons privately as well. She also visited her brother in the last holiday in South Africa in the last summer. So there were things she could do, and I'm sure she took great solace from those moments when she could. She also secretly visited AIDS patients in hospitals 20-odd times, and only 2 or 3 were public. So she did manage to spread her impact, as it were, both privately and publicly.
And those visits sent such a powerful message during a time when that message was really needed. Simon Perry, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And coming up, promising news on the economy.
Yeah, consumer confidence is up. So what does that mean for prices and even, we're going to talk about it, holiday shopping, the changes you could see next.
We're back with some promising news about the economy. A new report shows consumers are more confident than they've been in months, and that's causing a surge in early holiday shopping. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the details.
Hey there, though folks are still worried about a possible recession, a growing number of them see a light at the end of the tunnel, and retailers are taking notice, rolling out their holiday sales in August. The calendar might not even read September yet, but holiday cheer is spreading early for inflation-weary families. A new survey shows consumer confidence in the economy rising for the first time in 4 months, with expectations for the future also inching up, thanks in part to falling prices at the pump.
If fuel prices go down, everything else kind of goes along with it.
This new confidence now driving a super early wave of holiday shopping. Fears of growing inflation causing more than a third of consumers to buy their holiday gifts, with the summer heat still scorching.
How many people are like, "You're already shopping?" I was like, yeah.
Mother of 3 Marissa Kyle started shopping for the holidays months ago, concerned that rising inflation could mean fewer sales in the fall.
My middle daughter is really into LOLs and Rainbow High. And so I was able to get a lot of those items for less than half of the price.
Hoping to cash in, retailers like Costco, Sam's Club, and Home Depot are already rolling out holiday sales and displays with big discounts on everything from apparel and appliances to sporting goods and toys. Walmart unwrapping its annual top toy list nearly a month early this year, featuring a majority of items under $50, and even adding a new budget-friendly category, toys under $25.
We know customers are looking for incredible values, and they're definitely starting to think about the holidays a little bit earlier than they have in years past.
With many retailers saddled with huge inventory, surpluses from the pandemic, experts say now is also a good time to score deals on big-ticket items like a new TV or laptop.
Prices are down now. Our consumers are smart enough to realize that they should actually jump on it now and not wait, because the future looks uncertain.
Of course, we're all used to that hectic shopping period later in the year, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and the dash to Christmas. But now, since we're seeing the holiday shopping season start earlier, retailers may begin to rely a little less on those busy stores around that time. Back to you.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much for an early look.
We've got some advice for all those confident consumers. We are joined now by Trey Bodge, smart shopping expert at TrueTrade.com. Good to have you with us this morning. So that new report on consumer confidence is obviously welcome news after months of declines. What impact could that have on the economy, both in the short term and the long term?
Sure. So I was really encouraged to see this, as I think we all were. And we've seen some belt tightening in the past couple of months with a lower consumer confidence, lower back to school shopping numbers. And so if we feel a little bit more confident, hopefully we'll feel a little bit more comfortable to do some shopping. And I think, like your reporter said, this might lead to some early holiday shopping as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what Gabe said. He mentioned holiday shopping season started early, as much as that hurts my head right now. Is this the right time to buy? How might this affect deals on, say, Black Friday or some of those other things we've gotten to know closer to the holidays?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question because we don't know what Black Friday will look like if people start shopping early. So essentially, the fall season is pretty slow in terms of shopping, right? So if we see more early holiday sales, that might pick shopping up a little bit. And that is a good time for certain consumers to do a little bit of early holiday shopping. I'm hearing that classic toys and some electronics are on sale right now and will be through September and early October because of those overstocks that we've talked about in the past. We've got larger retailers holding a lot of excess merchandise. And so those items will be priced to move. And so if you are someone who likes to plan ahead and maybe get a jump on some early holiday sales, it will be a good time to do that. But I don't think that Black Friday, Cyber Monday will be kind of underwhelming. I think it'll be just as exciting as it always is.
All right, so grab that pumpkin spice latte and get all your holiday shopping done on Labor Day. Let's talk about inflation, which is one of the main reasons that we see consumer confidence go up and down. It remained unchanged from June to July after 25 months of increases. Any feeling that we could maybe see a decline soon?
Well, it's hard to say for me. I'm not an economist, and so I look at this from a shopping perspective, but I'm always glad to see inflation down. Consumers really struggle when inflation is high and prices are high, and we're obviously getting some relief at the pump as well. So fingers crossed that inflation will continue to dip. You know, we have a really big mountain to climb if we're going to try to beat holiday shopping numbers from last year. We were up 14.1%, which was massive. So I don't know if we're going to get there, but I'm hoping to see some excitement around shopping again, because we've been pulling back in the last couple of months, like I said.
All right, Trey Bodge, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Coming up, breaking barriers in a male-dominated field.
Yeah, I'll talk to an executive in the National Hockey League about how she's helping change the sport and bring in more diversity. That's next.
Welcome back. Now it's time for the latest edition of our series, Women Mean Business.
Today we're highlighting Kim Davis, the National Hockey League's Senior Executive Vice President of Social Impact, Growth Initiatives, and Legislative Affairs. Before we speak to her, here's a look at her story.
A high school tennis player, Kim Davis channeled her tenacity on the tennis court into an impressive career. As an executive at J.P. Morgan Chase, Davis quickly made her mark, managing powerful men who were often much older than her. but her fearless leadership style set her apart. Davis then signed on to Teneo as Senior Managing Director, advising Fortune 500 companies and executives. In 2017, she entered the sports arena, joining the NHL as Senior Executive Vice President of Social Impact, Growth Initiatives, and Legislative Affairs. Davis's leadership and philanthropic work has made a major impact on the league over the past 5 years, and she promises there's more to come. Kim Davis is a woman who means business.
And now Kim Davis, NHL Senior Executive Vice President of Social Impact, Growth Initiatives, and Legislative Affairs, joins us now. Kim, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We're loving this series, and we're so happy to have you join us for it. So first, I just spoke about how you manage people at JP Morgan Chase. In some cases, men were older than you were, which I think just on its surface sounds intimidating to anyone. And we love using this series to sort of hear how you navigated certain times in your life. Can you tell us how you sort of found your voice and were able to find a place at the table in an environment like that? What was that like?
Good morning, first of all, Savannah. So great to be with you. When I think back on my career some 30 years ago, the thing that occurs to me is that I always felt like I deserved a seat around the table. And I was lucky enough to have both mentors and sponsors early in my career. And one of my first sponsors told me that men suffer from the imposter syndrome more than women do. And that stuck with me. And so whenever I felt like my confidence was waning, I always remembered those words. And that really helped me navigate some of those more difficult situations.
I love the way that you just said that you always felt specifically that you deserved a seat at the table, because I think so much of the time, so many of us are just wondering, is there room? Never mind even considering the fact that there should be. So just act accordingly. You're known, for now being in the sports world. And I think that's something, as in many fields, probably the same thing could be said about JP Morgan Chase, but the sports world, something we often regard as male dominated. And I know that the NHL also didn't have much diversity going on. What was it like to enter that world, and what's it been like to try to make real change in that regard?
Yeah, I go back to that idea of mentors and sponsors. And when I talk to young people, I often distinguish between a mentor and sponsor, as a mentor being someone that tells you and a sponsor sells you. And I was lucky enough to have in the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman, both a mentor and a sponsor. He both told me what I needed to do in order to be successful, but he also sold me to owners and presidents of the clubs in a way that helped me to really accelerate my lack of hockey knowledge, but the competencies that I brought from 30 years of experience.
Wow, we love this segment because there's always these little things that we can write down and remember to help us all out. And one tells you, one sells you. That's a good one. When you talk about now the league being diverse and representative of everyone, I know that you've said this is a movement, not a moment. Explain, what that means to you at the NHL with the actual work that you're doing now, but also what it should look like across industries.
Yeah, for the NHL, it's been perceived as a sport that wasn't necessarily for multicultural audiences and women. And in many ways, I think my work is to really burst that myth. There's a rich history of Blacks in the sport of hockey going back to the 1800s, as well as the first woman back in the 1800s. It's an article in a Ottawa magazine. So the idea here is to create these ambassadors all over North America and all over the world that love hockey and can talk about and tell their stories about hockey. And that really means a movement that includes everyone that loves the sport of hockey and those that want to love the sport of hockey.
I love that. Kim, you've already dispelled quite a few words of wisdom, but we do always like to end this segment by just asking for one specific piece of advice that a young woman who's watching this right now could kind of grab onto and remember as she's embarking on her career.
Find ways to manage what I call the 3 Ps, your preparation, your passion, and your purpose. And not every job is going to provide passion and purpose, but when you are prepared and you find that integration of passion and purpose, you will be successful.
This is what I'm saying. We always need to take notes during this segment, the 3 Ps. I love it. Kim Davis, thank you so much. Really an honor to have you join us for the segment. We appreciate your time this morning. So great to talk to you.
Thanks, Savannah.
We also recorded, so you can go back and rewatch segments if you didn't take notes.
One of these days, we'll bring all these good notes together in something.
Coming up, we have got an update on NASA's planned mission to the moon.
Yeah, plus an exclusive look at a program hoping to provide internet to the world through space, how it works, and where it's already being used. That's next.
Welcome back. If you know someone who is a messy eater, we have the perfect gift, perhaps a holiday gift, as we were talking about moments ago. A T-shirt with ketchup already on it. Yeah, Heinz is releasing a pre-stained clothing line. The saucy shirts come with a spot of their famous condiment already smeared on the front. The collection uses thrifted clothes, and I ruined that. And if you relish the idea of wearing one of these, the proceeds are going to the nonprofit Rise Against Hunger in support of global hunger relief. And if you had already missed that story, well, we just helped you catch up.
It's like, what's coming? I can't. Just too good at this. All right, now, T-minus 3 days. NASA says it will now attempt to launch its Artemis 1 mission to the moon this Saturday. Engineers say they fixed a problem with one of the rocket engines that forced mission managers to call off the launch on Monday, as you probably all saw. The uncrewed test flight is the first of 4 planned trips to the moon with the goal of establishing a permanent lunar base. The mission will take 6 weeks, testing NASA's massive new SLS rocket and the Orion capsule before sending astronauts in 2024.
While the world awaits NASA's mission to the moon, SpaceX is fresh off its 38th rocket launch this year. 38. It wasn't as big and nowhere near as historic, but SpaceX is light years ahead in a different space race. One of its divisions, Starlink, is trying to become internet provider to the world, solving infrastructure problems from space in areas where crucial connectivity is either unreliable or completely unavailable. NBC News correspondent Cal Perry got an exclusive look at the program.
What, about 15 miles?
Yes, to a spot where you can actually get service on your phone.
Jackie Toledo and Pat Gibson are raising 3 generations of children here on the edge of Navajo Nation in rural New Mexico. In a place where households are separated by miles of desert and ancient cliffs, Starlink is the only option for communication here.
And the jetpack didn't really help too.
So this has been the thing that's worked?
Yes, definitely. It is.
That thing is one of 650,000 terminals in 40 countries around the world communicating with Starlink's growing army of satellites above us all in low Earth orbit. For the last 3 years, Starlink, a department inside SpaceX, has been hitching a ride from the Falcon 9 rocket launching from Florida and California.
And liftoff. Good, Falcon. Good.
Lauren Dreyer and Bianca Reinhardt are 2 of the few hundred employees working inside Starlink.
It's education, telehealth, communication.
Something all too easy to understand in a place like Ukraine, when traditional ground-based communication systems were some of the first targets by Russian airstrike.
We had, thankfully, a team on the ground in Europe, both Tesla employees, SpaceX employees, that set up an almost instantaneous supply chain to get some terminals that we already had in Europe into Ukraine in about 48 hours. So one of the most impactful moments for me, there's a video on Reddit, I think shot by Ukrainian Witness. There are hundreds of people gathered around a single Starlink terminal, calling and FaceTiming.
Business questions arise about the speed in some places and the steep price tag. It's $600 up front for the unit. $110 per month is the current subscription price.
How do you solve some of these problems?
Speed and cost. I think we're constantly launching more satellites. I think we as a company have a track record of constantly trying to drive costs down.
The Cuba Independent School District in New Mexico used COVID relief money to provide Starlink to their 400 households and 700 students. The funding lasts until 2024, but after that, the district and the students are on their own, something that would leave hundreds of children back where they started before the pandemic, isolated and behind.
We would give kids books. Why wouldn't we give them internet connection? Why wouldn't we see that as an equalizer for students who live in places where they either can't afford it or can't get it?
A technology that provides great opportunity. The only question now is for whom? Cal Perry, NBC News.
And that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Stick with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.